Some of the biggest business impacts of the pandemic can be seen in the housing industry. As more and more people moved out of the Bay Area to work from home and avoid paying the high rent, rental prices started to plummet as low as 30% in some areas, making the last 6 months or so one of the best times to move to the Bay Area. And in an era of technology, many turn to one San Francisco-based rental platform called Zumper, which is now the fastest growing and third largest rental platform in all of North America, serving 1/3 of U.S. adults. On this edition of Startups with Sanaz, we're speaking with Zumper CEO Anthemos Georgiades. Anthemos, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Sanaz.
Now, Zumper's been around since 2012 and has 70 million annual users. That is no joke. Describe to our viewers what Zumper is all about, and why is it, as you say, making renting an apartment as easy as booking a hotel?
Well, Zumper was founded out of my own frustration when I moved to the US of how hard it was, not just to find an apartment or a house to rent, but actually to get the one you wanted once you found it. And so we help on both those fronts. We help renters actually find their house with more inventory than anyone else. So if you're looking for an apartment or a house to rent, you're going to find a lot more on Zumper than you'll find elsewhere. And then secondly, we'll actually help you get it. So whether that's pre-qualifying yourself, actually going through a credit check through Zumper and showing it to the landlord so you stand out, we want to actually get you into that unit, not just help you find something that you like.
So it's not just listings of available rentals. You guys kind of help with the whole process of securing an apartment once you find the one you like.
That's right. It started with listings. I think like any two-sided marketplace, we first said, okay, we've got to solve this chicken and egg of like, to get renters, we have to have listings, and to get listings, we have to get the renter. So we started solving that, but then that isn't enough. And if you think about like DoorDash or Airbnb, they kind of fully went end to end and met the kind of hosted the transaction on their platforms. Long-term residential rentals is an even bigger industry, and no one has succeeded in doing that. And that is what Zumper is ultimately focused on achieving.
And I'd assume that given the platform and the way you say it operates, you kind of, or renters can kind of feel secure in knowing that they may not be faced with a scam. Because you go on to Craigslist, you find an apartment, you see a certain apartment listed for a certain price, you love it. You know, a lot of times we've reported on stories that people go out to even see an apartment, and someone that doesn't even own the apartment shows up to collect a deposit from them. I mean, there's a lot going on in terms of scams these days, and the housing industry is no different. So Zumper can guarantee that if someone is using the platform, isn't going to be scammed if they find, let's say, a unit or a house that they like.
So that's an absolute central focus of ours. So this year we'll actually have just sort of 100 million users. And so every now and again, there'll be something that every large platform will face. We do two things to really ensure the security of our users. One is on listings that we've manually verified ourselves. So we know 100% the person here is who they say they are. It will show a verified badge next to them. And that is 100% you are talking to who you think you are. Secondly, like most Silicon Valley startups, we have an amazing machine learning and data science team who use quantitative methods to actually prove certain behaviors of signups of people that we don't think are trustworthy, or maybe posting a listing in San Francisco from Montana, which may be a little suspect. And so we use programmatic ways to also ensure the veracity of all of our listings.
That's incredible. Now, there's a lot of rental listings out there. Why do you think Zumper sets itself apart from Zillow or some of the other ones?
Yeah, I mean, when I started Zumper, I'm British originally. I was living on the East Coast at grad school, and I was looking for an apartment. I was using kind of the name you mentioned, maybe apartments.com. What I found was a lot of these listing sites skewed very heavily to the multifamily. So if you look at kind of like many of these sites, they'll typically kind of have like the large tower blocks, but they won't have the mom and pop listing next to the tower block. And that's because the mom and pop listing pays less than the kind of multifamily landlords might pay to advertise. And we thought we want to build a consumer site first. So we absolutely work with the multifamily, but we also allow the mom and pop listing to get onto the platform. And I think our philosophy is to build for the renter first. If you have the renter, you will be able to bring the landlords, whether the mom and pop landlord or the multifamily landlord. Whereas I think some of the platforms that came before Zumper started with the B2B side, the kind of the landlord or the property manager first, and then tried to solve for the consumer. And I think like many of Silicon Valley's startups, we took the side of the consumer first. And so our ambition is if you come to Zumper, whichever state you're in, you will see more listings on Zumper than anywhere else. And that's how we want to serve our renters, because whether we make money from the listing you end up leasing at or we don't, at the end of the day, we know that you're going to spend a third of your income on your rent on average. And that's the biggest decision you make on the internet every single year, is where you decide to live if you're a renter. And so to offer the widest array of options, whether we monetize them or not, is absolutely central to becoming the leading consumer brand in the rental industry.
And then ultimately, over time, you develop that reputation amongst renters. So then you have more renters coming to you for the services for which that you're providing, and then it's kind of a win-win on both ends. But I have to ask, where did the name Zumper come from?
Yeah, Zumper is a weird name. I'll give you that. And a bit like Zillow and Trulia, who came before us, it kind of doesn't mean anything in the in the English language. So what's kind of an advantage of it is you can kind of build the meaning into it. Our typical user is a 28-year-old woman. And so over time, we want to build Zumper as a brand for her to have a fresh start, to make independent choices, to pursue her career, and with renting as a vehicle for that. However, it did have an origin. And so in British English, there's a word to gazump, which means to take a real estate listing at the very last second. And we played on that when I started Zumper, because Zumper is end to end. You can walk into an open house with your iPhone or your Android phone and tap a button and get the listing on Zumper. And so it was a play on our e-commerce end-to-end mission to call it Zumper. And so even though it doesn't mean anything to the average person, it bakes in the mission of make renting an apartment as easy as booking a hotel from the very beginning.
I love it. That is absolutely genius. Now, talk to me about the pandemic. The pandemic has changed the way so many companies operate. A lot of companies have had to completely overhaul their operations to kind of adapt. How has your company adapted to the pandemic, or has it?
So we went home in March, just over a year ago. We were one of the first companies to send the team home. We thought maybe 2 or 3 months, and here we are kind of almost 13 months later. Everyone's remote still, whereas some companies have kind of gone back. We have not. Good timing to ask the question. We just announced the future of work to the Zumper employee base. So we're approaching 250 people. HQ is in San Francisco, but we already have more people outside San Francisco. And we just announced 2 hubs today, this morning to our team. We announced a hub in LA and a hub in Miami. And we think the future of work is distributed, accessing talent across the US and potentially across the world, and no longer just focusing in the Bay Area. And secondly, I don't think the future of work for many high growth companies is going to be 5 days a week in the office. We also don't think it goes the other way. We don't think it's 0 days in the office. A lot of our core best talent coming through the ranks at Zumper, they want some in-person interaction. They don't want to just be at home all the time. So I think Zumper is going to return to 1 or 2 days in the office, the rest at home, and kind of a pretty flexible kind of lifestyle built around these hubs. So I think the 5-day work week in the office is gone, and the future of work is flexible, with people able to work from various different hubs over their career. And to answer the question, we've been far more productive since we've gone to work from home. And that is a staggering realization we have had. I came from a world in my 20s of management consulting where I worked at my desk for 22 hours a day. It's astonishing that we've come to these conclusions. And it's even weirder that it took a pandemic to show us what could be done. But I think the days of going to work in the way we went to a year ago, they've gone for many companies. It's going to be very different.
Well, congratulations on the expansion. That is always great news, especially during a time when business is very difficult. It's great that you are expanding pretty much to a nationwide level. What are you seeing in terms of rental trends as a result of the pandemic? Are you seeing more people doing virtual tours? Are there other kind of trends that you're seeing when it comes to renting a unit? And how have those trends impacted rents and just renting a unit here in the Bay Area?
So on the technology side, I think it's accelerated adoption of online leasing and taking stuff, even if you haven't seen it, by a decade. So we've had so many leases done on our platform, sight unseen, but we had a VR tour or a video tour. So we're super excited when you think about us having been positioned as a company that says make renting an apartment as easy as booking a hotel. The pandemic has brought that forward 10 years. And so I think we're so well positioned for that. In terms of the Bay Area, it's just fascinating. I think the top 10 cities in the US in terms of the highest rents, and the San Francisco was number one, New York was number two. All those cities took a major haircut during the pandemic in terms of their rent prices, which is a proxy for the stories many of you have reported on, which is people were moving out of dense urban neighborhoods during the pandemic to go live with family or to go get some space. What's interesting about the return is other cities are recovering a little faster. So New York is recovering, LA is recovering. San Francisco's rents were still 24% down last month. And so the Bay Area is showing a little bit of kind of sluggishness in terms of the return. We still believe a majority of the people who left the Bay Area during the pandemic will come back. And I think it's an amazing time for people to move to the Bay Area if they haven't experienced what it's like here in Silicon Valley, because the rents here are the cheapest they've been in almost 10 years. So we think the Bay Area will be back, but it may not be back to the peak of rent craziness that it was before the pandemic, where rents hit $3,700 for an average one-bedroom apartment. And I think many people think that might not be the worst thing in the world.
I mean, I can definitely agree with you, but I do agree with you in that people will probably return. The Bay Area is really just such a wonderful part of the world, with such a wonderful, region in the country. I feel like you can't be too far away from it before you miss it and want to come back. Anthemos, is there anything else that you want to let us know? Obviously, you said the prediction for the rental market here in the Bay Area over the next few months, you think it's going to slowly come back, but not as rapidly as some other cities. You say that it's not necessarily going to go back to where it was before, which is good news for people wanting to live in the city and not wanting to shell out so much money every month in rent. Is there anything else that you see for the rental market here in the Bay Area, or just anything else you want to let our viewers know about Zumper and what the platform offers?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking for an apartment this year, there's this kind of a term that was coined by the Zillow CEO, actually called, I think, the Great Reshuffle, or the Grand Reshuffle, that come summer and the fall, we're hoping many of your viewers are going to be vaccinated and feeling safe and ready to move. There's going to be a huge mobility kind of switch up in the US come the fall. People that have postponed their moves are going to move. And there's going to be this enormous pent up demand, whether in the Bay Area, whether on the East Coast, in the middle. There's going to be huge social mobility created this summer. And we're so excited to help people kind of deliver their fresh start and find what they've been looking for that they've potentially put on hold for a year. And so if we can help, download our apps, go to Zumper.com on web. That is the mission of our company, and we're here to help you get that fresh start. And so we're really excited for people to get vaccinated, to feel safe, to see their families again. I know I am. I haven't seen my father for a year and a half, who's based in the UK. And so I'm just excited for everyone on the other side of this, and we're here to help if we can.
I think this is definitely an exciting time, and here at Cron and Startups with Sanaz, we do love a good consumer startup. And again, congratulations on everything, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Really quick, Zumper is available on both Apple and in Google Play, right?
That's it. You can download us on both, or just go to us on web. That's correct.
All right, Anthemos, well, thank you so much. And again, thank you for joining us this afternoon.